The text came through at 6:47 on a Tuesday evening, while I was still in uniform, still smelling of the West Wing's recycled air. Don't come to your sister's engagement party. The guest list is already full. No apology. No explanation. Just 2 sentences from the man who raised me, discarding me like a seating chart error. I read it 3 times. Underneath the White House, past checkpoints that knew my name, past the badge that said Colonel Griffin, something inside me went very, very quiet. My name is Savannah Griffin. I'm 46, a colonel in the United States Army, 3 years into a classified advisory role with the National Security Council. To my family, I was simply the daughter who works for the government, a woman who never married, never had children, and somehow never amounted to what my father considered success. Success had a name, Lauren. My younger sister sells luxury real estate in Charlotte. 6 months ago she got engaged to Bradford Ashworth III, whose family owns half the commercial property on the east side. When she called to tell my parents, I heard the celebration through the phone, my father's booming voice saying, "Now that's what I call marrying well." I was happy for her. What I begrudged was the silence that always followed whenever anyone asked about me. I sat in my car in the White House parking structure, hands on the wheel. I typed back one word, understood. I didn't cry. What I felt was a strange, settling calm, the kind that comes when you absorb a blow you've been half expecting your whole life. That silence hadn't started with a text message. It started decades earlier in a 2-story house in Roanoke, Virginia. My father, Wallace Griffin, wasn't a cruel man. He never raised a hand, barely raised his voice. His neglect was quieter, a slow accumulation of absences that taught me year by year where I ranked. When I graduated from West Point, my parents didn't come. When I made captain, when I pinned on silver oak leaves, none of it registered back home. Military doesn't build families, he used to say. It breaks them apart. What he never knew, because he never once asked, was what that uniform actually meant. He didn't know about Iraq, redirecting a convoy on intelligence nobody else believed, a call that likely saved 11 lives. He didn't know about the Bronze Star sitting in a drawer, still wrapped in tissue paper, because I'd never found an occasion where showing it to him felt like it would matter. He never asked. So I stopped offering. You learn not to bring gifts to a house where no one opens the door. The next evening Lauren called, her voice cracking. A national magazine had run a feature on a White House ceremony honoring military advisors. There was a group photo, and underneath, in small print, Colonel Savannah Griffin, senior military advisor to the National Security Council. My father had frozen mid-page in his recliner and spent the evening calling old friends to ask if it was real. He thinks you did this on purpose, Lauren said. To embarrass him right before my engagement party. 20 years of silence, and his first instinct was suspicion. Not curiosity. Not guilt. Nobody in this family knows what you do, Lauren said quietly. Nobody's ever asked, I said. The next morning my father showed up at the Northwest Gate in his good navy jacket, expecting to walk in and ask for me at a front desk. That is not how the White House works. He stood at that checkpoint for 40 minutes while Secret Service verified that a Colonel Savannah Griffin actually worked in the building. When I came out to meet him, people passed and greeted me. Good morning, Colonel, a nod from a 2-star general I'd worked with for months. I watched my father's head turn each time, tracking something he couldn't make add up. I didn't know, he said, his voice stripped of its usual certainty. Savannah, I had no idea any of this was real. You never asked, I told him. It wasn't cruel. Just a fact laid down between us. He asked me to come to the party anyway. I told him I'd think about it. I told myself I wasn't going, until Thursday night, when Lauren called again, this time frightened. The magazine had reached the Ashworths. Bradford's mother had asked about me, expecting a charming story, and gotten silence instead. They felt misled. There was talk of postponing the engagement entirely. I need you there, Lauren said. Not for Dad. For me. I said yes. I arrived at the Ashworth estate Saturday evening in a pale blue dress, telling myself I was there only for my sister. That lasted about 10 minutes. A retired Marine colonel in a tweed jacket approached first. "Colonel Griffin. I read about the operation you supported. It's an honor." Then a naval officer. Then a veteran who'd served near where I had. No fanfare, just a quiet current of recognition moving through the room, the kind of respect that doesn't need to be loud to be real. Bradford's mother, Diane Ashworth, found me near the terrace, champagne in hand, her smile polite and cool. "So you're the sister," she said. "The one working in the government office." Lauren's been rather vague about what that means, exactly. It wasn't an insult. It was a test, delivered in front of enough people that my father, standing a few feet away, went pale. Before I could answer, he stepped forward. "She's not vague about it," he said, his voice loud enough to carry across the terrace. "I am. I've spent 20 years telling people my daughter files paperwork somewhere, because I never once asked her what she actually does. She's a colonel. She advises the National Security Council. She redirected a convoy in Iraq on intelligence nobody else believed, and it saved 11 men. She has a Bronze Star sitting in a drawer at my house because I never gave her a reason to take it out." His hands were shaking. "I made her small because her life scared me. That's the truth, and everyone standing here deserves to hear it before they decide what kind of family they're marrying into." The terrace went quiet. Diane Ashworth's expression shifted from polite curiosity to something closer to respect. Bradford put a protective arm around Lauren, and for the first time all evening, she looked relieved instead of afraid. Guests who'd been circling with drinks and small talk had gone still, watching a man say out loud what he should have said 20 years earlier. I didn't rescue him from the silence that followed. I let him stand in it. "Why now?" I asked, quietly enough that it was just for him. "Why here, in front of everyone?" "Because I've been wrong about you in private for 2 decades, he said. I wasn't going to keep doing it in private too. Later, after the crowd had drifted back into conversation and the danger to Lauren's engagement had visibly passed, my father found me sitting alone at the edge of the garden. "I have letters at the house," he said. "Yours?" "From Benning, from Iraq, from Afghanistan. I opened the first few, years ago. You sounded so sure of yourself." It scared me. So I stopped, and I told myself I'd get to the rest eventually, and eventually became decades. I didn't tell him it was fine, because it wasn't. But I didn't walk away either. The next afternoon, at my parents' house, he pulled a storage bin from the back of a closet that had always been off-limits. Dozens of envelopes inside, bound by year, most still sealed. I chose one from my first year at Benning and read it aloud, my voice catching on my own younger handwriting. "I don't need you to be proud of me right now. I just hope that someday you'll want to know what my life actually looks like. Not applause. Just curiosity." My father put his face in his hands. My mother stood in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. Lauren rested her head on my shoulder. "I don't know how to undo 20 years of getting this wrong," he said. "But I want to try." Before I left that day, he took a framed photo of me at 23, freshly commissioned, and hung it on the living room wall, right beside Lauren's portrait, which had hung there alone for as long as I could remember. 20 years late, he said. But there. I won't pretend one terrace speech and one bin of unopened letters repaired 2 decades. There will be harder conversations ahead. But I used to think I needed an apology. What I actually needed was simpler. I needed him to look at me, in front of people, and choose the truth over his own comfort. Lauren's wedding is in the spring. My father asked, almost shyly, if I'd wear my dress uniform, not to make a statement, he said, but because he finally wants to see it. I told him yes. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this: sometimes the people who hurt us aren't monsters. They're just people who never learned to ask the right questions. That doesn't excuse the silence. But if there's someone in your life who's stopped seeing you clearly, it might still be worth leaving the door open. Before you go, hit record on this story if it hit close to home, and tell me in the comments, would you have stayed on that terrace, or walked away? We share stories like this every day on Lineage of Lies, real moments about family, forgiveness, and the quiet battles so many of us fight unseen. If this one moved you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Thank you for sitting with me. I'll see you in the next story.